Hello, I'm Pablo. Today I'm not actually writing any music. I actually just want to talk about the channel and how things are going and what I want to do in the future. So, I wrote a draft of this before starting to release any videos on the channel, kind of talking about general stuff, ideas for the channel, personal motivations, and I planned on recording and releasing it once I got into the swing of things. But after getting into the swing of things, well, my perspective has changed a bit. So, I went back and revised a lot. I've always struggled getting pen to paper, at least when it comes to writing music. So my original goals were just to sit down, write anything, usually for my assignments, edit the footage down to a watchable length, and hit upload. The idea was it's okay if it sucks. I remember being a beginner on just about every instrument I've ever played. Putting in the hours sometimes when you don't want to is necessary to get better at anything. And for me, I want to get better at writing music, so it's only logical. So starting this channel, I wasn't too concerned with making something super high quality. I just wanted to prove to myself that I can get into the habit of doing it and stick with it. And I think I've been pretty successful. And it's not just music I'm talking about with the channel. You know, I view everything I've been doing on this channel as practice. Practicing editing videos, practicing writing scripts, practicing, just sticking to deadlines, and pretty much everything involved in the whole process. After releasing the first dozen or so videos, I'm definitely no Mr. Beast YouTube expert brain, but I do feel like I'm getting the hang of it and I'm starting to see what works, starting to see what doesn't, and what I want to do moving forward. Not too long ago, I released episode 5, which was based on my midterm project, and a lot of people liked it. I'm pretty proud of what I made, and I can't wait to revisit it and play it, get into more piano stuff. That was a lot of fun. But from a content creator standpoint, the show must go on. So a few days later, I used old footage from, another assignment, I had done, and I released episode 6, and it was fairly underwhelming. Not that it was anything out of the ordinary, especially from the early episodes, it was right alongside those, fine, but I feel like for episode 5, I raised the standards, and it just felt weird going back. So from episode 7 onwards, I've been trying to improve the production of these videos, starting with making sure every episode has a finished piece of music. I also want to make sure that the videos themselves are more entertaining, smoother editing, more of my commentary during the process, so you don't just get like live Pablo reaction in the corner. Problem is, to be completely honest, the creative process is just boring, like really boring to watch. Even when I cut around and keep the parts where stuff is happening, it's still like at best underwhelming. Again, I'm just sitting there in the corner, deadpan, inputting MIDI or notes or something. Nothing's happening. So I'm thinking of ways to format these episodes differently. This will probably in the short term mean I cut more of the writing process, but I do want to strike a balance between process and entertainment because I still think it's an important part. Regardless of what I decide to do with that, I really want to stress the importance of sharing my process on this channel, regardless of whatever format or style I end up presenting. The issue is mostly just due to generative AI. I personally am strongly opposed to it being used for just about anything creative. Unfortunately, it's 2025, and I'm trying to make online content, and eventually I want to start releasing my own music. So regardless of what I do as a creative person, I am competing with an endless tidal wave of AI-generated slop. It's unavoidable. I'd like to get into that topic deeper, but that's just not the topic of this video. I will be returning to this at a later time. To keep it short, if I'm competing with a machine, then the thing that makes me stand out is my humanity, and I want to offer that on this channel. If I started this in high school, I would have liked to be faceless. I would have liked to hide behind anonymity and let whatever I create speak for itself. But now I really have no choice, so here I am, with my face and my name on display. I want to be human for the audience, and I want there to be no doubts as to whether this is my personal creative output or the uninspired vomit of prompting some algorithm. And this goes for just about every aspect of my channel, not just the music, but the writing, the thumbnails, anything I personally make. I will not let my mind, my creativity, and my human experience be robbed of me. So back from that tangent, my goals moving forward are pretty simple. I want to start increasing the quality of my output here on YouTube, and I want to gradually work towards writing and releasing my own music out into the world for everyone to hear. I think it's going pretty well, and I just need to keep going. So I'm honestly feeling pretty good about it. So that's what I'm going to be doing. Now I'd like to talk about why. So today is my 24th birthday. I'll know it, I'm not uploading this on the same day, definitely sometime later whenever I edit this footage, but I feel like I'm in a weird situation. Currently, I'm a student at university. I'm studying aerospace engineering, and if I had to be completely honest, I'm not really enjoying it. and I never really have. I picked up a music minor recently just to take some music classes, and I have to say, this has been my favorite semester of school since since I've gone away to college. And I'm actually excited to get up in the morning and go to class. I'm excited to do the assignments, and I'm spending a lot of my free time working on personal projects rather than just wasting it doom scrolling for hours. And for the first time in years, I have goals. I don't just have daydreams. And even if it's slow progress, I feel like I'm actually doing something. When I come home, I'm always asking my brother, like, what stuff he's working on in the animation program. And I'll share some stuff I'm working on. And I'll get excited about what video I'm releasing next. And then I feel like I'm finally just having a little piece of that college experience that I haven't gotten to experience. Especially considering when I started in 2020. That was rough. Now, I still have my foot in the door for engineering. It's not like I've completely dropped it. I'm still taking one engineering class this semester, but like compared to studying music, I'll go and sit down in a massive hall. I'll watch the teacher read off slides, and then I'll kind of just reluctantly go home and drag myself through some boring ass homework. It sucks. And it's frustrating because that's what I'm supposed to be enjoying and excelling at. But I almost just can't bring myself to do it anymore, I used to say I never regretted anything, but honestly, I just hadn't lived enough yet. I think I'm finally at the point where I'm ready to say I regret not studying music in the first place and not trying something like this channel years ago, because I'm just seeing now how much time I've lost. I always wanted to be an engineer. I grew up on Legos and K'NEX parts. My dad was always like handy and taught me how to use power tools, and I love that stuff. When I was young, everyone around me realized I was good with numbers and had a good memory. So, put all those things together and, well, I wonder what he's good at. I was pretty much sold on the idea of being an engineer since I was really young, and I was comfortable with that idea. Most people grow up and aren't particularly good at anything, and then struggle to find something they're passionate about. Some never do, and it's a tragedy. But having that when I was like 10 years old and just looking to the future and saying like, yeah, that's what I'm going to be, it was super encouraging and very comforting, like, to be completely honest. Thing is, I was never really a great student in high school. I did well on tests. I just never really enjoyed school. I was content with coasting along. I was always satisfied with a B. I spent my free time doing other things. I practiced piano. I played video games. I got into programming. I'd rehearse with my band. Just hang out with friends. It was just, I was enjoying life, regardless of what I thought at the time. I really enjoyed high school. Going off to college, I have no idea what was going through my mind when I picked up a double major in aerospace and software engineering. Again, not a very good student, but I somehow thought it was possible. I'm not really going to get into details about how those 5 years in college went, because it's a long story, but just know that it was disappointing. I've transferred twice now. I've been around. I really thought I'd love it. And time after time, I just didn't. And I kept telling myself, it gets better. It gets better. But at the end of the day, I feel like I was just lying to myself. I'm not even sure I knew what I wanted at the time, because I had a very glorious idea of what I wanted to do, I wanted to spend my days somewhere testing out wild theories and creating things that don't exist and being able to call that my own. I looked up to famous inventors and engineers who are known for creating the craziest stuff. I looked up to legendary businessmen who built empires. I looked up to composers and musicians who had millions of fans and a place in music history. I looked up to filmmakers who made my favorite movies. I never thought that I'd be glorified bureaucracy in an office working some soul-sucking 9-to-5. And I know that sounds insanely delusional, but I'm kind of serious. I wanted to be like these people. I wanted to be someone extraordinary, and I had no idea what that even meant at the time. Somewhere along the way, as I was out on the world on my own, I became a complete loser. I became a disaster who had lost all hope of doing anything exceptional. And I feel like I'm now undoing years of pessimism, nihilism, and learned helplessness. But it's still an ongoing battle. I feel like I'm up against the clock. And this kind of gets to my overall struggle. There's an ancient proverb I heard a while ago. I have no idea where it's from, but I've been thinking about it lately. It goes like this: dig the well before you are thirsty. The idea is that you need to be prepared when a crisis arises. If you start planning a solution when something urgent happens, it's too late. And the problem is, I feel like that's exactly what I'm doing right now. I feel like I've wasted the last 5 years of my life. I'm 24 now. I'm not a kid anymore. There's expectations of me, and I've been asking myself for a while, when does my life start? The idea that if you're like not successful by your early 20s, you won't ever be, it seems like a complete lie. Like, obviously there's still so much life I have left to live, and anyone in their early 20s has left to live, but when you look at it, there's some truth to it. If you aren't successful by your early 20s, you're pretty much expected to cash in your chips and live an ordinary life, whatever ordinary even means. There are some who like make it later, but they take massive personal risks in order to do it. I feel like I finally have some clarity in my life, and if I had this when I was like 16, I would be golden, but I'm not 16. And I still feel like a complete loser sometimes. I work part-time. It's not like I'm unwilling to work a traditional job, Part of me understands that's part of being a responsible adult. But honestly, it just scares the shit out of me. When I look at a lot of adults, especially from my parents' generation, a lot of them kind of hate what they do for a living. And they're basically forced to do it, or else they're like homeless, or they can't support their family. They give up 40, sometimes 50 years of their lives doing something for a living that they just don't care for. And then they're old, and then that's it. The youth is gone. The time has been destroyed. They're never getting that back. And I'll say it again, that absolutely scares the shit out of me. The point I'm trying to make is that I'm not afraid of working hard, but I want it to be worth it. I want to look back at the end of all this and feel satisfied with my life. So for the third time, I'm revisiting this. I don't feel like the old ending was worded as good as it could have been. And also, it's just been a busy week. Had some death in the family. Just kind of happened. No warning. That sucks. This morning, I also got to wake up and see that one of my favorite chess players and commentators died. He was only a few years older than me. That one just feels weird. No one's going to be here forever. I've decided from now on that I'm just going to be delusional. As a kid, I aspired to be great, and when reality hit me and I realized that that sort of thinking was stupid and unrealistic, I started on a journey of slowly and steadily giving up every ounce of hope I ever had and hating just about every aspect of my life. So why not just be delusional again? I genuinely believe that it's a gift for certain people. That illogical confidence that you can just do things is so necessary for anyone who wants to be successful, and it's no virtue. I understand it's a double-edged sword, but it's so potent, I never want to give it up ever again. I had a good friend of mine over recently. We talked to each other about our respective plans for the future. I occasionally give him shit for being busy because, a lot of times it just feels like he never has time for anyone. But honestly, that's a sacrifice he had to make. I looked around the room that night and I realized that none of us had guaranteed futures. We were all kind of just struggling in our own ways. And what we all wanted wasn't waiting for us patiently, somewhere at the end of the line. All of us needed to do a lot of work to create the futures we wanted, This is the part where I can start listing how terrible everything is, from the cost of living, the geopolitical instability, societal breakdown, all the money is fake, and there's a suspiciously anti-human sentiment being propagated from our tech overlords. But I won't. Go and watch the thousands of videos out there covering that in detail. Everything sucks, and you don't need to hear it again from me. I used to be kind of defeatist about it, but ever since taking up this new, delusional outlook, I've actually started to look at it differently. To me, because everything sucks, I had nothing to lose in the first place. There was no ideal middle-class life where I get a college degree and get a steady job so I can buy a nice-sized suburban home and support my wife and kids. That's just not available to me, and it isn't available to the vast majority of my generation. So might as well send it. What's the point? People might judge. I might fail miserably. Whatever. I think I'm capable, and I'll succeed eventually if I commit myself to it. This is honestly the only way I see forward. Not just for me, but for most young people nowadays, Just go big. The alternative is ending up in wage slavery somewhere, renting an apartment forever, just getting completely rug pulled on the American dream. So just do it. Go for it. Why not? I've come to terms with the fact that I don't actually know what comes next in a lot of ways, and I'm at peace with that. So in all honesty, I'm just going to charge headfirst into whatever happens. YouTube itself isn't my long-term plan. It's kind of just me doing what I can right now with the skills I have and seeing how it goes. Music is a great place to start because it's something I love and I genuinely want to improve at. But honestly, I'm more concerned with who I want to be than what I want to do. And whatever I end up doing, I want to be great at it, whatever that takes. I regret the last 5 years of my life, but I don't regret any of the decisions I've made in the last 6 months. I genuinely feel like I have a reason to wake up in the morning again. The drought is coming. Water isn't free, so I'm trying to dig my well now before it's too late. I just hope I can do it in time.